There is.
Really? When?
Well, next week you have fewer problems.
Yay!
That's not always a good thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, I think you'll.
Because they're a little more extensive.
I think you'll be okay. I think you'll be okay. Problem 7-3. How many of you have done this problem?
No.
You
I
got
don't
through
see
it?
too many hands getting raised.
Good.
Yeah, I sort of got through it.
Okay. Couple entries. Well, that's a good start. So this problem is looking at bond anticipation notes, which mean that if you have been approved to issue a bond, right, but you haven't yet issued that bond, you issue a note in anticipation of those bonds, that when the bond goes through, you pay off the note. Does that make sense? That's generally what they are. There's a bunch of stuff in your chapter about them, and it runs you through some entries on bond anticipation notes. Okay? So let's run through this one. It's kind of long, but I think once you do the first part, the second couple parts aren't too bad. They are long. Okay. It says, Butler County issued $2 million of 9-month, 9% bond anticipation notes to provide financing for construction of a county baseball stadium. This prevented delays in the beginning of the project, which had been approved at an estimated cost of $4 million. December 31st is the end of the county's fiscal year. The following transactions occurred during 2008 and 2009. Number one, the bond anticipation notes were issued at par, which means their face value, right, on July 1st, 2008. So, cash, notes payable. Okay, because these are notes. Number two, the county signed a contract on July 1st, 2008 with the King of SWAT Construction Company to build the stadium. The contract price was $4 million. This is part of what the example in your book gives you. When you sign the contract, you build the encumbrance, right? So you have encumbrance for $4 million. Encumbrance is outstanding, $4 million. Okay, that's your contract. You've signed the contract. You haven't done anything yet, but you've signed the contract and set up the encumbrance. The King of SWAT Construction Company billed the county $1.8 million during 2008 for work completed on the project. County paid the amount billed less a 5% retainage to be remitted upon final approval of the stadium. So you have you reverse the amount of the encumbrance, right, that is being addressed. Then you record
The 5%.
You record the expenditure of $1.8 million, the 5% that you're holding back, and the cash that you're giving out. Are any of you have any of you done construction projects? Seen them, overseen them? So a retainage, right, is something that is common. You don't pay 100% of your bill, right? Because you wait until the end, you hold some back. You have what most people will call a punch list. You go through, you make the punch list, you give it back to the contractor, they finish and address the punch list, then you give them their money. Okay? So that's what that retainage is. It is still part of your contract. It is still a payable, right? Because you owe it to them, but you hold it back until the project is finished. You also have to record the interest that is payable on the bonds that you issued. Okay? To record the amount that's payable on the bond or on the note that you issued. Okay? What is a bond anticipation note?
Oh, okay.
That shortens it down. That's what they say in the book.
Okay.
So, plus it's easier than writing bond anticipation note every time.
That's the note payable?
Yes.
How do I know that from the question on number 3?
How do you know that you need to accrue the interest?
Uh-huh.
Good question.
I can be pretty interested
How do you know you need to accrue the interest? I'm not sure.
You just know you're supposed to.
The only way that I would say is because it says that during 2008 they did this. So the assumption that you're supposed to make is that you're now done with 2008. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if it says during 2008, then you're thinking, okay, well, the only way I know what happened during 2008 is that I'm at the end of 2008, right? And so now I'm going to accrue the interest that was earned, or that would have accrued on that bond anticipation note as of 2008. Does that make sense? Okay. It's a detail. It's a very finite detail. Okay. And the next transaction goes into 2009. So whether you included it in 3 or whether you included it as part of 4, at some point you would have had to accrue that interest, right? Because the fiscal year ends. Okay. Number 4, on February 20th, 2009, the county issued the baseball stadium bonds, $4 million par, at a price of $4.18 million net of $120,000 bond issue costs. It runs you through this. I think that might be in the example in your book as well, in case that it runs you through, but I don't remember. I know this piece is. So for A4, you issued the bonds, which means you got cash, right? You got $4.3 million in cash. So you issued bonds at $4 million. You had other finance. You had a bond premium of $300,000. You could net these two entries. You could net these two, right? It gives you the $4.18 million number. So if you use that number, you would just net these two entries. But in your chapter, it shows them broken out. So that's why I put it this way. Okay. You would receive less. You would receive 4.18. If you netted them, you just take this and it would lower your cash, right? To 4.18. Does that make sense? Okay. Number 5. The county repaid the bond anticipation notes and interest upon maturity from the bond proceeds. So you're just undoing the note payable, the accrued interest payable, and then the interest that you now owe. And if you didn't accrue this, then you probably put expenditure interest $135,000. Right? The only problem with that is it was from long enough ago. You should have already recorded it. Okay? But again, it's a subtlety. So number 6, last one. The King of SWAT Construction Company billed Butler County $2.2 million for work performed in 2009 to complete the baseball stadium. Project was approved by the county. King of SWAT Construction Company was paid in full. The remaining assets were transferred to the related debt service fund. So you have a couple pieces going on. The other $2.2 million of the encumbrance is reversed. You record the expenditure. You're paying out the expenditure of the 2.2 million plus that retainage that you had held, right? Because the project was accepted, and you pay out the rest in cash. Okay. Then you transfer the remaining, which happens to be $45,000, to the debt service fund. Okay. Journal entries again. Just have to remember where everything goes. Okay. All right, I think we can make it through all these. Okay, so then it says, also prepare 2008-2009 financial statements for the county's baseball stadium capital projects fund. Assume that the bond anticipation notes do not qualify as long-term liabilities, and that the proceeds of the note and of the bond are limited to use for costs directly related to construction of the baseball stadium. So here's your statement of revenues, expenditures, changes in fund balance. 2008, you had construction expenditures of 1.8 million. 2009, you had 2.2 million. 2009, you had bond issue costs of 120,000.
Just gotta put everything where it belongs. Just gotta put everything where it belongs now.
Yeah.
So taking all your previous.
Everything needs to go where it belongs. Interest was 90,000 in 2008 because that's the amount that you had accrued. Remember, you had another 45,000 in 2009. Other financing sources in 2009, you have bonds, right? Because that's when the bond issue actually happened. Okay. Bond premium, 300,000. Transfer to the debt service fund to close things out, 45,000. And your fund balance at the end of year 1 was negative. At the end of year 2, it's 0 because you closed the fund out, right? So you would expect that. Okay. Then letter B is on the next page. It says repeat the requirements from A, this time assuming that the bond anticipation note meets the criteria for being treated as a general long-term liability. Okay? This is, again, laid out in your chapter. You don't need to do, oh, I'm sorry, here's the balance sheet for number 1. It's not real long. You had some cash in 2008. Notes payable, contract payable, accrued interest payable, negative fund balance. And then in 2009 you have nothing because at the end of the year your fund was closed. So you have no balance sheet. Okay? Just do A. Don't do B. Just do A.
As you're looking at it.
Well, it's...
Really?
Yeah, really, just do A. But I will show you B. So the reason they have you do, the reason they ask you this is because they want to show you the difference between what is a note payable, right, and what is a long-term liability. Okay? So the key that I want you to get is there's a difference between a note payable, right, which is shorter term. So this bond anticipation note can be considered, most of the time it is considered, a note payable. Okay, so a shorter term note. It can be considered a long-term liability if it meets certain criteria, and your book tells you what that criteria is. So you would record it differently. Okay? And your statement of revenues, expenditures, and fund balance would look different, and your balance sheet would look different. Okay? because of how it affects your current expendable funds. Okay? So after you guys turn this stuff in Friday night, I will send this to you on Saturday so you can review as needed. Okay? But I'm sure you'll all deal with bond anticipation notes at some point in your lives.